episode with Mary and Candace. Say your part, Candace. Say hey.
Mary, just go ahead and do your thing.
Don't worry, this is normal for us. Today, we got some special guests joining us. I don't know if you guys tuned into our reunion episode and where we talked about the organization that I helped volunteer for. Well, today, we have the executive director and founder, along with the chief operating officer. So let's welcome Michelle, Norman, and Jennifer Barnhill. Hey, ladies.
Hey. Welcome, ladies. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yay. Thank
You guys
you
are
for
awesome.
being a part of this.
I loved your episode, your reunion episode. It was awesome.
It actually,
Thank you.
yeah, it was really fun. Just to hear it also, Mary, from like when we met finally for the first time in DC, and to hear your perspectives of everything. And also meeting you, Candace, that was a pretty cool episode. So I'm just feeling honored that you guys invited us today and have a fun convo. It'll be great.
Yeah, and honestly, if you ladies don't mind, just giving us a little bit of background about yourselves and also your position in the organization as well.
Sounds good. I'll start off. So Michelle Norman, I'm a Navy spouse. Gosh, for about 26 years or so, living here in Virginia Beach, Virginia on the East Coast, whoop, whoop. And
ABA.
Cali, West Coast.
She's the West Coast, I'm the East Coast. So we kind of span everybody, because then we got Mary in Hawaii. It's awesome. But yeah.
Wow, yeah.
So yeah, been a part of this Navy community for a long, long time. My husband's a pilot. He now commands and drives ships. So he's a part of the carrier, the John C. Stennis here out of Norfolk, Virginia. We have two beautiful kiddos. And my daughter is actually the inspiration for Partners in Promise. She was born very early, about 17 years ago, and has a lot of disabilities. And so we quickly enrolled in the Exceptional Family Member Program. And it's been a ride. We're just thankful and blessed that she's here. We've had a lot of challenges medically. And when she got older, we had a lot of issues educationally as well, particularly when we moved back here about 6-7 years ago. And we've had a lot of legal battles to ensure that she has an appropriate education. And in that journey, we've met a lot of folks that have helped us and trying to make big change, legislatively and within our community, within the Navy. So it's been a ride. And along the way, I've met wonderful people like Jennifer and a lot of other fantastic people on our team that are all motivated and committed to try to help our exceptional military families. And so we just came up with this idea of taking it to the next level, having a nonprofit that really just focused on special education and how to improve and remove those educational hurdles for our kiddos. So, and I'll let Jennifer tell you how we met up. And we grew from one person, four founders. So there's Grace Kim, who's now our board president, and Shannon DeBlock and Casey McCarley and myself. And then I kind of just started Partners in Promise. Grace is now board director, and then our team just started to grow. So fortunately, Jennifer is one of them. So I'll let her kind of talk a little bit about how we kind of met. It's a small Navy world.
It is. I'm Jen Barnhill, Chief Operating Officer, but I actually met Michelle because I was interviewing her. I'm a military family reporter, and I was just writing an article about her and the work that she was doing. And it was really just one of those moments where, we call them Harry Potter wand moments. Like you get the right wand when it the house blows up when it's the wrong one. But this was one of those moments where I saw an organization that had a mission that was not just a bunch of people complaining about a problem. They had solutions with it. And, it's tempting with the military sometimes when you have problems to just vent about it, right? I mean, we're on a podcast, venting happens, right?
Yes.
but at the same time, I was okay, this gal, Michelle, has solutions, and they're research solutions, they're database solutions that can actually make change. And I, at that time, didn't have any connection to special education at all, to my knowledge. until, recently I'm having my daughter now evaluated for a learning disability for ADHD. And so I didn't think I needed to know about the Exceptional Family Member Program other than I was helping and volunteering. And it turns out I was very uniquely placed to be able to help my own daughter because of this organization. So
it's personal.
Awesome.
Now it's personal, right? Like all the things
Absolutely.
you've learned along the way, you can actually apply yourself. And, and when I met Jen, let me tell you, she's not the easiest person to be. She knows how to interview well. She can dig,
okay, I was like, what are you about to say about me?
No, like you.
I'm not that easy. Yeah, it's correct.
But she asked well, I'm not going to talk about whatever that's going down that rabbit hole. I mean, you know how to. Wait a minute. Let's back up the train here. You're a great interviewer, but you know how to dig, and so your questions were not easy, and that's what I loved about your writing when I first, was starting to follow you. I'm like, she's asking the hard questions. She's asking having those uncomfortable conversations, and I just loved that about her. It was not fluff. And I hate fluff. And so that's where Jen, I'm like, if there's anyone that's going to write this article and can do it well, getting the facts right and the data right, it's Jen. And so it just was like a perfect match, match in heaven. It was great. Yeah. And then what happened?
I'm blushing.
So you have to continue with the story.
Oh, I don't even know where we left off with the story, Michelle. What just that?
Remember so I was able to testify in DC. And so we were talking a lot during that point, and it got really busy. Remember, just like everyone contacting me here, I want to write this article about, speaking about EFMP in front of the House Armed Services Committee. And I think I just started to get really overwhelmed. And then, again, that magic wand, Jen kind of swings back to me and says, hey, how's it going? Do you need any help? And I just felt like so much relief that somebody understood how complicated, this issue was and was willing to take the ball with me and run with it. So it just was, a beautiful thing. And that's how we started really Partners in Promise. One person, two people, and whew.
Yeah. And then we got married and that.
Yes.
But seriously, it's amazing. We've just grown as an organization and I think we have Candace too. To be honest.
That's right. She's a part of
we
it.
do.
Exactly.
It's a package deal.
So true. So true.
I was going to say, you kind of spoke on, your daughter being the inspiration behind starting the organization, but can you kind of get a little more in depth in the actual process of going from it just being an idea to it actually being a full running organization that's actually out here creating change?
Yeah, that's a great question because, that's true. A lot of people, as Jen said, when they run into problems, in the military, it's easy to vent about it. And oh my gosh, I can't believe I was on the phone with TRICARE for 4 hours and I didn't get anybody. And, that kind of happens a lot with the EFMP program. And, when we started talking about solutions and I looked around at other military service organizations, who else is talking about special ed? Who else has this in one of their, primary issues? And nobody really was touching upon it. We knew we were onto something when because they always tell you, don't start a nonprofit if someone else is doing the exact same thing. You're stronger together. And so if you can partner with anybody, and trust me, we took our time. We really did talk to a lot of other organizations to see if there were, some opportunities there to kind of not reinvent the wheel, right? But we realized that there was just no one out there for advocating on behalf of the military families and their children. There were different focuses of different organizations, but truly there were none that were military spouse led that really were focused on educating and advising those families so that they can feel empowered to kind of make great choices to help their child get an appropriate education. And so I think that was kind of the first step is is anyone else doing what we're doing? And then when we realized that there wasn't, it just made sense to kind of formally organize and, just try to figure out where our space is, in the community, and be that single voice, because there was really no voice for EFMP. And sure enough, actually, after we formed, we thought, wow, there are a few other organizations that are talking about different aspects of EFMP. Maybe we should try to create the EFMP Coalition, which we did, which has 5 different organizations that all have a focus of EFMP. And we feel that was a wonderful way to amplify, all of our concerns. And we meet on a monthly basis. In fact, Jen, was able to join today. They had a meeting today. And it's just finally, the stronger your voice, more people are going to listen to you. And someone's, you got that seat at the table that we're like, finally, even though it's a small percentage, I guess, but 10%, 12% of the families are EFMP in the military. They always were left out, of some of the big changes that are happening for military families. And, I think also when you think about how stressed our families are, and how burdened they are just taking care of children with special needs, that really does have that impact on military family readiness, the retention of our families, the ability of our service members to be able to do their job without stressing out about how their families are doing back home. And so it all goes back to, how do we strengthen our military families so that they can serve and serve without any of those worries of, their families being taken care of, as we should. We should take care of all of our military families. And so, so blessed that we made it to this next step. We're still young. We're very lean. And but I could not ask for a more amazing team that all are very committed and dedicated to this mission. And, we always talk about the strong whys. And every single one of us have a strong why. And I just, if I had, endless money, I'd pay them all and be able to say, let's keep going. And I think that's the great thing, is that they're here because of not the money. They're here because they know they're making a difference.
Absolutely.
And it may not be for their family initially, but for the families that are coming after us. And so it's just, it's grown into a fantastic organization. I could not be happier with the direction we're going. And of course, we've got great people at every level too. We've got fantastic COO, we got a great development director, we've got great advocacy, Mary, we got special projects, perfect, social media. We got some experts such as EFMP experts, dyslexia experts. So, we've got everybody covered. So it's been a fantastic ride so far. Hopefully got great more things are coming in our future. Which, we talk about a few of them. One of them would be the survey coming up. And I'll let Jen talk about that in our podcast. So lots of great stuff. Lots of great stuff.
Did you get all of that? We have so much. We have a lot of stuff going on.
So before we get into that, I'm sorry. What you about to say something, Candace? Oh, okay. Before we get in that, you guys touched bases on, how the organization came apart, but the name. Who came up with the name? Yeah. Where did that come from?
That was a very long process. It really came down to, we were able to go to the Congressional Military Family Caucus Summit in October 2019. I had done some advocating on the Hill, and I found a few, there are many legislators that were actually interested in the Exceptional Family Member Program. But one of them was the co-chairs of that caucus, which was Congresswoman McMorris Rogers and Congressman Bishop out of Georgia. And she said, this is great. I want you guys to speak, at this summit that we're having in Fort Benning. And I'm like, this is awesome. The first time that anyone's speaking on special education, because they've had previous panels on housing, military spouse employment, all the normal issues, and education, but more general education, the typical education issues. But no one was speaking to special education. So me and the other co-founders came together and okay, this is our moment. Let's put together an awesome presentation that kind of defines the issue, but then bring the solutions to the table. What are the things we would like to see that could be enforced legislatively that will help these families? And so we had this great presentation. Congresswoman McMorris Rogers came back to us not even a week later and said, you know what, this is awesome. Draft some legislation for me. And so, what?
Wow.
No big deal.
No big deal.
Nice.
I do that every day, you know? So
You know,
it was
on your free time, have
Yeah.
you ever written a law? You
Yeah.
know, one of those things.
you know. So of course we're freaking out just a little bit, but we all, you know, have experienced various degrees of challenges in special ed. Of course, Drace is an attorney. You know, our family's been through 2 formal administrative hearings, which we call due processes. So I've seen the ups and downs, and the other 2 gals as well had been through due processes or very difficult situations. So we came up with what you would call the Promise Act. And it took a long time to come up with something snazzy because everybody on the Hill wants a snazzy word. So the Promise Act stands for Protecting the Rights of Military Children in Special Education. So PROMISE.
And if you're wondering, that's not grammatically correct capitalization.
That's
which
right.
only bothers me a little bit. As an English major, as a writer, it's hard, but it is a promise matters. It does matter.
Okay, so it does.
I love the Promise Act and I love Partners in Promise, but my grammatical red pen doesn't, you know.
Well, I want to see what you would have come up with because, man, it is hard
I know,
to
it's hard.
come up with something that's snazzy. But that is where, you know, the Promise Act was like initially 12 different initiatives that we felt could be enacted and that would help military families. And over time, that Promise Act has been, you know, modified and altered. So I think we're down to like 6 or 7 of them. And so that's really where we decided, well, we know that we need to work with others to get this through. So when we were thinking about the organization, it's like, why don't we come up with something that has promise in it, but that other people can come together and support and empower. And that's where Partners In came in. So Partners in Promise, everyone works together on behalf of our military children with special needs. It's kind of all seemed to click into place, you know. So that's kind of the background of it. And if you want to know more, of course, go to our website at thepromiseact.org. It has a little bit of history there, you know, how we kind of came together. And we even have the Promise Act, I think, on there too. It's one of our early blogs back in the day. So, yeah, it's come along. And, you know, legislatively, it's been fantastic because last year, 50% of those initiatives were enacted in the defense budget. So we're just working on the last portions of it and hope that we can see some progress this year and the next year and going forward. But it was a big year for EFMP, and you don't always see that every year. So we were very fortunate. The timing and the momentum was, we were in the right place at the right time. So it was great.
Okay. Now, have you noticed any differences between like the branches? Are there different experiences when it comes to some of these issues between the branches?
I feel like Mary's like nodding her head right there. I feel like Mary, you can jump. You've got this. You've got it.
No, this interview is for y'all too. Focus on y'all too. I'll say my little 2 cents, but I'm gonna let y'all take the lead.
So that was actually included last year. So standards, it's definitely different. We know this from our family stories. So like our organization is primarily focused on storytelling in 2 different ways. Talking to people like this in a podcast or a blog or an interview, and also in our data and our survey data. So we know that our families are experiencing different things based on those 2 aspects of storytelling. And so they confirmed it. Last year in that defense budget, it did call for standardization across the military service branches. And, you know, the logical question is, well, where is it? You know, where is that standardization? And like anything with the government, you know, it takes time, but it is something Partners in Promise is paying attention to and asking for that information for our families, because I think, you know, that's a hard thing, no matter the topic, whether it's EFMP or TRICARE updates or, you know, what is covered and what isn't, you know, all those things that are hard to understand. or access information in the military, that's always a problem. So our job as an organization is to find a way to communicate what is available to families. And so we're on it, and we will share on our website any updates to EFMP. So if your listeners are plugged in or they need to know these updates, feel free to check out our website. We have a newsletter where they can subscribe and get some updates. But also just to share stories, because if things are working, we want to know that too. Right. And like I said, we're a survey-based organization. We believe in the data because that can help make change, right? So I'm a nerd, but I love the data.
But it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
But we are a little partial to the Navy, obviously. So I would say that there's a lot of great things, that are happening in the Navy. But it is great that there's movement to standardize among all the service branches, and I will say that, the Marine Corps kind of led the way initially. They are a smaller service, so they were able to kind of maybe pivot a little bit over a decade ago with EFMP, and they hired education attorneys to help. They hired more case managers for EFMPs, and they have everybody located in one central location, assignments, personnel, blah, blah, blah. So they can just go up a floor or down a floor to kind of answer all the EFMP questions. Whereas, for Navy, they're kind of separated, and you got military personnel in Millington, Tennessee. You've got the CNIC and DC and BUMED in 2 different places. So, each service does it a little differently. So the standardization is going to be amazing. There hasn't really been a lot of communication yet on where every, service branch is on that process. But the idea is they're all going to be, operating the same way no matter what base you go to, even if it's a joint base. Hopefully families will know to expect the exact same thing. So
exactly.
That'll be exciting.
And we're just excited to ask families what their experience is through our survey. So this is a little bit different, but part of the reason why we're talking is we obviously want to hear from all families about their experiences with EFMP so that we can take those experiences and share them with others. The reason it's important and it drives what we do as an organization. We heard in our survey last year that a lot of families are worried about enrolling in EFMP because of stigma and worry about a service member career. These are real problems. This is not just EFMP, but just anything where you're self-identifying within the military can feel really frightening for families. And we actually found in our survey that the folks who were connected to EFMP, not necessarily because the program was great, but if they were plugged into EFMP, they had better outcomes for special education, which was really interesting. We're not saying that that's because of the program itself, but I think it's, as you know, if you're plugged into a resource or a community and you know who to ask a question of in the military, that's gold. So we know that stigma is preventing folks from getting the resources they need. So we're doing a podcast and to address all these different areas of stigma. We know this is a huge, huge issue for military families. So, I know I want to keep talking to you about that too, but there's so much going on.
Go ahead and jump in. Tell our listeners what the podcast name is, tell them what the mission is, and what it's all about.
Well, I'm just trying to get y'all to come on the podcast.
That's right. We do.
But you just got to put us on a spot like that?
Absolutely, I do. That's how you get the story. Didn't Michelle give you a warning earlier? That's how you got it. No, for sure.
It's true.
So it's a lot less laughing in this podcast than this one because your podcast is fun. This one is also fun, but in the way it's hard and interesting, and the conversations you don't want to have. Because it's about stigma. So stigma, for anyone who doesn't kind of understand the difference between what a stigma is and a label, when you think of stigma, it's something that's permanent. It actually comes from a Greek word that is a permanent brand that someone would be would be placed on someone's skin that they could not remove to identify them as a criminal, someone who is undesirable. And so it has this idea of permanence, something about you that you can't change that impacts your ability to be successful in life in some way. And specifically within the military, we're talking about special needs, those who have disabilities. We're talking to people who are victims of trauma. We're talking about race. There's a ton of different areas of stigma that our families are facing. And sometimes we see that these areas of stigma prevent them from getting help. We know that about mental health, right? We know that that's huge. But it's in other areas too. And folks feel like they can't plug in and belong to this organization if they feel there's stigma associated with just being who they are. And so we want to talk about it. So our podcast is called Disruptive Storytelling with Military Changemakers, because we know that there are so many amazing people doing amazing things out there. And so our season 1 is called Military Stigma, Tough Conversations Worth Having.
It's exciting.
Ooh, I'm already sweating.
We're definitely looking forward to that.
I know. Oh my gosh. It's hard, but it's so important that we have these hard conversations, right? Like it's fun to have fun conversations, but it's important to have the hard ones because we know that they help make change for our families.
Absolutely. I agree. I know that when I started talking about special education and the problems we were having, it was not a welcome conversation at all, and I think it was just easier for organizations to say, oh, it's just a small group of people. Those are just very outspoken, crazy parents that are having these problems. They wanted to dismiss those folks who had some very legit, problems that could be solved if folks were following federal law. And, I just think that it's important. It's important to kind of push the envelope and strengthen numbers. And so the hope is that this podcast, people can not only just educate themselves, right, on what some of these issues are, but then they will feel more comfortable even speaking up about it. Like, okay, I have ADHD, my kids have ADHD. There is a reluctance to get into EFMP because I want them to enlist one day, those type of conversations. And that way we can try to figure out, well, what is the solution to that? Maybe there are needs to be changed, on, perhaps recruitment, or big picture type of solutions. So I'm excited, Jen. I think you're going to be, it's not, like you said, going to be like a frou-frou type of podcast, but that's okay. That's okay. There's other ones like that, but this is going to be good, and I think that we're going to get a lot of great folks throughout, not just the militaries, but also the veteran community as well, to kind of chat about their experiences. So I'm glad we're doing it.
We would love to come on and be a guest on the podcast.
Yeah. I'm excited. You're going to have to talk with me. You're going to have to talk with me a little bit more. That's okay.
Yeah, I know you're tough. You dig deep. I know. I think I'll be ready.
Yeah. Well, we want to hear, just like you guys are sharing your stories and talking with folks and on this podcast, we know that helps people feel connected to this community. And, like you said, not everyone can have those hard conversations each time. It's draining to have those types of conversations. From my perspective. You just walk around after talking to some of these folks and you're like, I'm so blessed that you talked to me and shared your story, but I know now how much I could be doing more as an individual. I've learned so much. So I'm excited that you all get to hear it and learn it also.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys, through all the interviewing and advocating that you've done, what would you say is one thing that many people are unaware of when it comes to the experience of the military kid in terms of, or in regards to the organization as a whole, some of the things that they are oh, I didn't know, that you guys went through that. Have you noticed a trend in anything in particular? Sorry, I just made that question super long for no reason.
No,
So
I love that you did that. And because it gives it context. And yes, I mean, I think that when we talk to like our civilian friends, they were not aware that the IEP is just, not accepted everywhere you go, and that they just thought, oh, you just have a education plan. It's going to be implemented wherever you go. And it's not the case. I don't think they realize that, states do things differently. School districts do things differently, and that the federal law allows for, certain updates and changes. And so I don't think they realized all of what our kids have to go through every time they move, and not just education. I think it's also, guess what? You have to call all their medical providers, and say, hey, I'm coming. I'm not there yet, so I'm not sure when you need a referral, but I need to get on a wait list for developmental ped and for the speech therapist and the ABA therapist and for the OT. And oh, by the way, she needs to see a specialist. And so it's just a lot of like work on the spouse. I know that we've talked about that many a times, but the active duty service member is always so very busy when they get to that new duty station that they can't really do half of what, the spouse is doing. And, our hope is that to make that transition, those PCS transitions, just a little bit easier. So I think my civilian friends are just always floored when they hear the volume of work that has to be done every time we move. It's just, they have this wonderful setup, but they don't have to go anywhere throughout, their children's, life. They can pretty much stay somewhere if they're blessed for the entire 18 years. And so that's just, one of those things about the military lifestyle. It's just that move every 2 to 3 years is something that people, unless you've lived it, you don't really know how difficult it can be. Yeah. So that's my perspective.
Now, would you say your kids, like, have your children express frustration about the processes, or is this more like just being, as a mother, you're noticing these things and you're the one dealing with it? But is your kid also affected as well?
For sure. My daughter was. She had some therapists she absolutely loved. She loved, parts of her school before, and these are people that you rely on for care, or, they're just, you see them on a weekly basis, sometimes 2 times a week, 3 times a week. And then it's like they're part of your family, and end up, you're moving again. And so, these kids, they thrive on the consistency and routine. And then all of a sudden you're moving them. And, it's hard for them not to regress, because they will, just emotionally missing these people that have been a part of their lives, trying to meet new people, trying to get used to new therapists. It's a lot. It's a lot to ask for these kids. They always talk about the resiliency of our military kiddos. And, yes, some of them can bounce back a little bit, but, a lot of them struggle, and it just, compounds each time we move. So,
and we know that military kids in general have harder time with education. It's not just special education. It's just amplified with special education. All military kids have to hit the ground running in a new location. They don't have the benefit of, my sibling went to this school. You already know me. You know me because I was 5 when we met, so there's this lack of community that we face as military families. And when you're adding in this layer of complication with special education, it's just overwhelming for families. I mean, I'm new to it and I'm learning, and it is like learning a whole nother language to understand how to support your own child. Like, your child better than anyone else, but in order to navigate this world, you have to learn the law. And not only do you have to learn the law, you have to learn it in multiple states. So it's really a lot for families, but I think we would want to share with them that they're not alone, and there are other folks out there who care and who are taking their time and their talents and putting it towards fixing these problems. And we're not just our organization, but others too. And you're not alone.
Right. You're not alone. Exactly. And that's just so important, because I think when I started speaking out and families were contacting me saying, you're telling my story, that just kind of validated, like, we're out there. You just maybe can't see us because many of them are just barely trying to hold it together, but we know that they're out there. And, if you could just help one family from whatever advocating you can do, it's worth it.
Yeah, it is.
So if we have, anybody that's listening who, wants to get involved and kind of help in any kind of way, like how can they do that? And how can they reach out to you guys?
Well, the main...
They can,
go ahead. You got it.
No. They can connect with us on our website. We have the promiseact.org. And if they want to send an email with anything specific, any questions, it's info@partnersinpromise.org. And you can connect with us anyway. We're on social. We'll share that and hopefully could put that in the show notes or whatnot and give some ways to connect with us. But there's always opportunities for partnerships here.
Absolutely. And we do have a newsletter that goes out on a weekly basis, so they can sign up for that on our website, which is fantastic. That's really grown a lot over this past year. And we're out there. We're on all sorts of different platforms and sharing all the great things that we're doing every week. And it's been fun. It's been fun to see it grow. It's like your little baby, Yeah. I know it's probably the same for you guys with the podcast and just kind of seeing all your membership viewers grow. And it's beautiful, because that you are connecting more with those who really need it. So it's been great.
So I know you guys mentioned the podcast, but like, what's the next goal? The next, I guess, what's that next step for you guys?
Well, the podcast is huge. And I'll let Jennifer talk about, the next step, but it's basically our survey, our annual survey. So I'll let her chat about that, but that's huge. And of course, I'll just kind of stand in the back here, but I'm also seeing what's in the defense budget this year. So that's kind of like keeping our eyes on it, but the survey is going to be coming out first. Go ahead, girl.
Yeah. Speaking of children, my child just walked in, but this is life, right? So,
yes,
of course. So, that is life, especially when you're an organization that is all about kiddos. So, and working from home. So our survey, this is the third Partners in Promise survey that we've conducted. And last year we were really excited. We were able to put it through the ringer and get some statistically significant data that we shared, which is why we are doing our podcast. It's based on this information. So if families do nothing else, except for fight their own fight, which is absolutely totally fine, please take the survey, because this is a way for us to advocate for change for policies and programs that are impacting your life. And you don't have to do anything other than take 20 minutes and fill out a survey. It's going to be open September 7th through October 8th, I believe is the dates. And we're really excited. This year, we're going to deep dive into some different areas that we didn't cover last year. Enrollment status in EFMP. We're looking at how the military lifestyle may impact your child's ability to get diagnosed and receive services. If there's a delay in any of that process, we want to know so that we can understand what's going on with our families and use that to inform our decision makers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I'm going to mute myself because we're having a grumpy moment.
You're fine.
He's doing good. It's okay. It's been a long day. Blame it on the moon, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think we've had our...
Oh, no, I was just going to say same, what Jen said, I think that we're able to deep dive a little bit this year. And, we really looked at PCS transitions this year. I think, based on what kind of data we get from this next survey will kind of help us figure out, what other initiatives do we need to pursue in the defense budget next year. So I'm looking forward to it, and I think that as our name gets out there more often and more people hear about Partners in Promise, we're going to get more and more people to take the survey. That's been traditionally a very undersurveyed community, is our EFMP community. So I'm looking forward to seeing some more folks finding us, taking it, and seeing what's going on, throughout the service branches. So yeah, it's going to be great. So September, we need everybody boots on the ground getting it out so that we can get some good data.
Awesome.
All right, ladies, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming on. So before we leave, we're going to get into our affirmation that we do. You all are welcome to join us if you want.
I am enough.
I am
enough.
I have the power to create the life I desire.
I have the power
to create the life I desire.
I am worthy of my dreams.
I am worthy of my dreams.
I am worthy of my dreams.
Thank you for having us.
It's been such a great time. Thank you so much, Candace and Mary. We love you guys.
Yeah.
No, thank you guys.
You guys have a great one. And remember, shine, sis. You got this.
You got this, girl.